when I made previous script on CPU caches, I was commenting especially about the Zen3D, and some people may be noticing some limitations, and maybe they thought, based on the talks, that some parts make no sense. And I thought at least about two more important questions as far as I could see, and I will try to answer them. So the first question is it worth to add? So I was talking like a typical processor, like a Zen3D. If you look on a die, you see around 60% of the CPU is caches, and you add on top double of level 3, but in CPU area, at least from EMD slides and photos and so on, at least it adds another 50% of area. Is it sustainable, and does it worth for 20% speed up? And one part which we should talk, and this is not my field of expertise, and but realistically, by far the cost per processor, it's very small even with a very new process. I heard values around $50 or euros maybe to make one big CPU, but this means without the defects. But even if you account defects and so on, it's definitely way below $100, at least the silicon part, because the entire CPU costs less than $100 to make. And this is even including that right now we are after a pandemic, so the output of creating them is small. So the silicon part is really it's not zero, but it's, let's say you add $20 on top, put $30 on top, but the processor itself, it's valued even now, after the hype went off, at over 350 euros in EU. So I use Amazon Germany for reference, but it's worth it will worth to add $20 per cost to give 20% final to the user, especially if the user would play that particular game, and otherwise it will not buy from you. The other part is that it depends where the speed up is there. So probably it's less than 20% in typical use cases, like the game, which I put bottom right. But even there, it's a much better story. So the competitor is right now the 12th generation ICE processors. And if the game Final Fantasy a person would play on an Intel platform, you could at least say we are not so far behind. We are on the same ballpark in price, but we are maybe 1% less. But when it's better, it's really better. So if you play simulation games like Factorio, or you play, you put software that benefits from the cache, you get huge speed ups, even close to 50%. I noticed this kind of outrageous speed ups, at least of 20-30% in WinRAR and this Dwarf Fortress simulation. So let's go further. The most important part though is that as I said, you add 20% to a processor which you have everything validated, and this is also a very good thing for EMD, so they don't have to reinvent the processor to increase the height and so on. It was very well designed, and it will be very helpful for them in future for the next processors which will have also this 3D cache. But what's more interesting is that most of the speed up is in supercomputers, and this is where it worth for EMD to sell stuff. So for people who are not aware, EMD sells like 64 core processors, and some of them you can't find them on the market, but on the price like $8,600 a piece. Even the official price is around 700 euros or dollars less, but adding for $20 per module, and because the processor is modular or is named chiplet, you add, let's say, $100 per cost, but you charge users around 1,000 euros more. It's a worthy business, and also you smash competition. And if you put a lower core count, like 32 cores, it adds a premium still of around $800 on top. And for some people thinking, but $800 is more in processors or whatever. In fact, on the servers, the cost of servers is huge in licensing, in power output, and so on. So if you can cut by 50% some type of software, or 30% the cost in cores, which can be done, at least in some cases where it's very beneficial, this large CPU cache, it's a no-brainer for customers to buy it. So let's go on a second question, which looks more kind of reasonable. So what I was showing before, and I was commenting, is that if you look in the bottom left, if you take a process of around year 2000, K6-3, which was basically a K6-2 plus level 2 cache, you'll see that the K6-3 at 350 puts in a sandwich the K6-2 at 500 megahertz or 0.5 gigahertz, but it has even less cache in raw numbers. So just adding, let's say, around 25% of cache and having a deficit in frequency of 50%, it still behaves the same in terms of performance. And why, when you compare Zen with Zen3D, which is added just a cache, you may see even a very small speed up. In this white cruncher, the speed up is around 2%, if I calculate it correctly, 3% maybe, definitely not 50%. And there are more reasons, but most people, when they think about Zen versus Zen3D, they don't notice, for example, that the Zen3D has a bit lower frequency at around 7-8%, 6%. It depends also on the turbo and so on. But this means that the speed up is that it will compensate all the frequency loss, plus it will add 3%. And obviously this doesn't count in the places where it really shines. And the other part is that if you compare the caches, this is a CPU Z, and this I got 2 screenshots online. The processors look quite identical, minus that in level 3 cache, which is the slowest, it goes from 32 megabytes to 96. There is no other difference in how it runs. Maybe there is there is a later revision and stepping, which means which iteration is done, so it is a bit better validated. But other than this, there is no difference in any shape or form between Zen3D and Zen, minus a deficit in frequency. But when you compare K6-2 versus K6-3, you could see that in fact this in this case I didn't find one main board with level 3 cache, which will be on the main board, but in reality where the 256, which you may see it on the level 2 cache, this one is inside the CPU, and this is with basically on the speed of the system, on the speed of the processor, and it's not on the speed of the main board. So that big cache, and we will go back to the slides with speeds. So when you see the K6-2500 having 1 megabyte of cache, that 1 megabyte of cache was at most at frequency 133, when the 0 megabytes level 3 cache, in fact it was the K6-3 had the level 2 cache at frequency of 350 megahertz, so it was at least 2.5 times faster. So it was much faster to access, up to the point it will arrive to the system cache. So this is the final reason. So they are not comparable, and in fact my assumption it would be that you will see a substantial speed up when Zen3 to Zen4 would increase the level 2 cache. This will be similar with the K6 to K6-2, excluding that the actual processors today, they contain some level of cache, like 512 K of cache per processor in Zen3, which will be doubled if the rumors are right. So there will be a speed up much more substantial probably than Zen3D for most applications, and if it will be Zen4 3D, or I don't know how it will be named, this will add an extra oomph for the simulation kind of applications. So that's it. I think, and I hope you'll find it interesting, whatever I said, and I hope to see you next time, and subscribe if you like it, and have a good one. Bye bye.